All rise. 354 District Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Andrew Bench presiding.
All right, thank you. Have a seat. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin our Shattered Dreams trial for 2014, some brief announcements. First, about the chairs. Sorry, we're out. Those of you who are standing, I'm sorry you'll have to remain upstanding throughout the trial, and I do apologize. Second, I hope that everyone can hear me. If you're on the back row and you can hear me, raise your hand. Great, perfect, sounds good. Thirdly, the air conditioning is now on, and we expect it to go on. I didn't do it, but thanks for doing it. But the last thing I want to say before we begin this evening is that for those of you who have been involved in this Shattered Dreams experience, it's a total immersion experience. It's a very difficult process for those enactors involved, those parents whose children have lost their lives or have been seriously injured with injuries that may affect them for the rest of their lives. But it's also a very difficult experience for the enactors who are the defendants here this evening. And they've been very courageous boys. They've been very strong about this. I'm very impressed with these young men. I got a chance to meet them this evening. I think we ought to recognize how difficult it is for them before we begin this process, how difficult it is for the enactors who are playing these young men who have committed these terrible crimes. And so I just wanted to say to them, thank you, gentlemen. You're doing a great job, and we appreciate it. With that being said, is the state ready to proceed?
The state's ready, Your Honor.
Is the defendant ready to proceed?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. As soon as we have a bailiff, gentlemen, we will bring the jury in. There it is. Mr. Bailiff, can you bring the jury in, please?
Yes, sir.
All rise for the jury.
Thank you. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are about to begin this trial. During this trial, I remind you of the instructions that I've previously given you. I ask you to listen closely to the testimony, as no record of this testimony will be read back to you unless you specifically disagree about a statement made by the witness during the trial. Defendant Tristan Wooten, please rise. Cause number 17001, the State of Texas versus Tristan Wooten. In the District Court of Hunt County, Texas, in the name and by the authority of the State of Texas. The grand jurors for the County of Hunt, State of Texas, duly selected, impaneled, sworn, organized, and charged to inquire of offenses committed in said county and state, upon their oaths, present in and to said court, that on or about the 18th day of February 2014, in the Hunt County aforesaid and before the presentment of this indictment, Tristan Wooten did then and there operate a motor vehicle in a public place while intoxicated by reason of the introduction of alcohol, a drug, and or a combination of two or more of those substances into the said defendant's body, and did by reason of such intoxication cause serious bodily injury to another, namely Riley Cox, Matthew Urbina, and Annie Stewart, causing the vehicle of the defendant to collide with the vehicle or person of Riley Cox, Matthew Urbina, and Annie Stewart. To the defendant, to the indictment, how does the defendant plead?
Plead not guilty.
Cause number 17002, your plea of not guilty is accepted and entered on your behalf. Tristan Wooten did then and there by accident and mistake while operating a motor vehicle in a public place while intoxicated, when said defendant did not have the normal use of his mental and physical faculties by reason of the introduction of alcohol, a controlled substance, a drug, and or a combination of two or more of those substances into said defendant's body, and by reason of such intoxication caused the death of an individual, Charlie Pickens and Jessica Evans, by then and there driving said motor vehicle into and causing it to collide with the motor vehicle or person of Charlie Pickens and Jessica Evans against the peace and dignity of the state. To the charge, how does the defendant plead?
Plead not guilty.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten. You may be seated. Defendant Dylan Coleman, please rise. The State of Texas versus Dylan Coleman. On or about the 18th day of February 2014 in the county and state aforesaid and before the presentment of this indictment, Dylan Coleman did then and there operate a motor vehicle in a public place while intoxicated by reason of the introduction of alcohol, a drug, and or a combination of two or more of those substances into the said defendant's body, and did by reason of such intoxication cause serious bodily injury to another, namely Jada Hilburn, by accident or mistake, to wit, by causing the vehicle the defendant was operating to collide with the person of Jada Hilburn. To the charge, how does the defendant plead?
Not guilty.
Your plea of not guilty is accepted and entered on your behalf in cause number 17004, that on or about the 18th day of February AD 2014 in the county and state aforesaid and before the presentment of this indictment, Dylan Coleman did then and there by accident and mistake while operating a motor vehicle in a public place while intoxicated, when the said defendant did not have the normal use of his mental and physical faculties by reason of the introduction of alcohol, a controlled substance, a drug, and or a combination of two or more of those substances into the said defendant's body, and by reason of such intoxication caused the death of an individual, Giovanni Pimental, by then and there driving said motor vehicle into and causing it to collide with the person of the said Giovanni Pimental against the peace and dignity of the state. To the charge, how does the defendant plead?
Not guilty.
All right, sir, thank you. Your plea of not guilty is accepted. You may be seated. At this time, the state will call its first witness.
State calls Trooper Kevin Stroud.
Mr. Bailiff, Trooper Kevin Stroud, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may be seated. Trooper, if you pull that microphone close to you so that the jury can hear your responses. Mr. Kovacs, on behalf of the state of Texas, and when you're ready, you may question your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Trooper Stroud, you're a trooper with the Texas Highway Patrol, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were called out to a crash at Greenville High School on February 18th of this year where you died?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did you do when you arrived on scene?
Arrived on scene, immediately assessed what was happening at the scene, secured the scene, made sure that it was safe, and started identifying the occupants of the vehicle, drivers and passengers, and assessing damage.
Okay. And you responded to 2 911 calls, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, the state would like to admit State's Exhibit number 1 and 2 into evidence, the 911 calls.
Any objections to states 1 and 2?
No objection, Your Honor.
States 1 and 2 are admitted.
Your Honor, may I have permission to publish these to the jury?
You may.
Where's your emergency?
Yes, hi. I am on Monty Stratton going south, and I was just run off the road by 2 cars that were racing. I think they've maybe even now had a wreck over in the high school parking lot.
All right, so they were last seen headed southbound on Lonnie Stratton. What kind of vehicles were they?
No, I was going south.
You were
they
going
were going
southbound?
north.
Okay, so they're headed northbound.
Yes, they were headed north, like towards Lyons Lair and that way. I'm not a car person. One was white and one was gray.
Okay.
They were sedan cars. There were 2. It looked like students were driving them.
Okay.
I don't know, but I heard an awful crash. So
And you said they pulled into the high school parking lot. Do you know exactly where?
I couldn't see because of all the fields and the stadiums, and or the stadiums and all blocking me. But I heard a crash. I do know I could see in my rearview mirror as they passed me. They turned onto Lions Lair like they were going toward the high school.
Okay.
And then I heard tires squealing and then crashes. So and like I say, and I'm sitting in the field over here by Monty Stratton.
Okay. Do you need a police officer as well?
Go take care of that right now first.
Okay.
And I think I can get my car out okay.
Okay. I've got everybody on the way to check on them at the high school. What was your name?
My name is Joyce Smith.
Joyce Smith. Okay. All right. We've got them on the way to the high school to check on those two vehicles. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for calling.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm. (911). Where's your emergency?
There's been a car wreck at the Greenville High School.
The Greenville High School. How many vehicles are involved?
3 is what the kids told me.
Okay, 3 vehicles. Okay. And can you tell me if anybody's injured?
I'm headed out there right now. I think so. We'll probably need an ambulance.
Okay, and you said it's at the high school?
Yes.
All right, and possible injuries. And do you know anybody that's in there, or if everybody's outside of the vehicles or not?
I'm headed out there right now.
Okay, honey. And what's your name?
I'm Heath Jarvis. Prince William.
Heath Jarvis?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm getting the police and ambulance en route, okay? And how far away are you from where this is?
I just went out. We need your help. We need an ambulance.
Okay. Okay, we're getting them en route to you, okay? Just stay on the line. We're going to get the ambulance and the fire truck en route to your location.
Oh,
okay?
Please.
Okay.
Our kids, come on.
Okay. All right, they're going to be there momentarily, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Trooper Stroud, so you responded to those 911 calls, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when you got on scene, you did a crash reconstruction, did you not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're a crash reconstructed expert, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, I would like to admit State's Exhibit number 3, which is the crash scene diagram of the evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
State's Exhibit number 3 is admitted.
Your Honor, can I move around the courthouse? Around the courtroom, excuse me?
Yes, you may.
Okay, and can I have Trooper Stroud step down so he can explain the diagram to the
Trooper, if you step down.
All right, Trooper, if you just explain this diagram to the jury.
Okay. This is a scale diagram of the parking lot area where the crash occurred here at the high school. When I arrived on scene, I actually parked my patrol unit right here. There were first responders already on scene, the fire department and ambulance were on scene. I asked my vehicle, spoke with fire department who had advised there was a deceased person in the passenger seat of Unit 1. There's also a deceased pedestrian underneath Unit 2 correction. There was serious bodily injury to the pedestrian here in Unit 2 and a deceased pedestrian that was lying on the windshield of Unit 3 there. When we arrived on scene with Unit 1, we had the first responders there and check on injuries and such before somebody is transported and try to identify the persons involved. At this point, I started gathering information off the vehicles. Greenville Police Department had arrived on scene. I had spoke with the drivers of both vehicles, of all 3 units. Driver of Unit 1 appeared to be incoherent. He appeared to be under the influence of some type of intoxicant. Did have an odor of alcohol. I advised Greenville Police Department. They did a follow-up investigation with the DFG process. Same information was obtained from the driver of Unit 3 after making contact. Had very slurred speech. Appeared to be in that influence of a narcotic or an alcohol. Greenville Police Department also followed up with the investigation on that. At that point, I identified all the other occupants that were involved, all the pedestrians, and the occupants of the vehicles. And once vehicles were, or the other occupants were transported to the hospitals for treatment. I gathered the rest of the information from the vehicles and released them to a Petty's record service for towing and storage.
Okay, and could you explain to the jury, based on your investigation, what actually occurred that day?
Okay. Prior to the drivers of Unit 1 and Unit 3, the suspected intoxicated drivers, I had spoken with them and asked what happened. Both of them said that they were.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Overruled. Continue.
You spoke with the drivers of Unit 1 and Unit 3, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did they say?
When I spoke with the driver of Unit 1, which is Mr. Wooden, he stated that they had skipped class and had went out and been partying throughout the day and had consumed a few alcoholic beverages. And on the way back, he had challenged Mr. Coleman to a race.
Okay, and they were racing, do you know where they raced down Monty Stratton Street?
Yes, sir. He had stated that they had turned from the interstate onto Monty Stratton back towards PJC and the high school campus, and had raced down that. Didn't clarify which one. One of them said that they were on the wrong side of the road coming up Monty Stratton. They did turn east onto Lyons Lair and then turn south into the parking lot, the first entrance of the parking lot to the school, which is right here, and then accelerated rapidly through the parking lot. Mr. Williams stated that a vehicle, which is Unit 2 here, depicted in the crash scene, had pulled out, driven by Mr. Cox. He had pulled out from his parking spot and was preparing to leave school for the day and was struck.
Okay, and what did Unit 3 do, Trooper?
Unit 3 proceeded past the first collision, which there were two pedestrians crossing through the parking lot, and Unit 3 was unable to avoid striking them due to the speed.
Okay, and there were other officers on the scene too as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you were here mainly for crash reconstruction, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay, you also did take some photos, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Your Honor, I'm giving, for the record, Trooper Stroud states exhibits 4 through 9. Do you recognize those, Trooper?
Yes, sir. I do.
Okay, what are they?
There are pictures from the scene and the occupants and the parties involved. This picture.
Hold on 1 second, Trooper. Your Honor, at this point, the state moves to admit exhibits 4 through 9 of the evidence.
Your Honor, let me review them. No objection to State's Exhibit 6. I object to 1 through, excuse me here, we got 4 through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I object to that on the basis that they're more prejudicial than probative. They're needlessly harmful to the fairness of the tribunal and the fact finder in this. Believe that the information and identity of the deceased and the injured could be ascertained by a less invasive and offensive manner.
Your objection is noted, and although the photos do appear to be graphic, I believe that they help the jury to understand the nature of the injuries, the extent of the injuries, and in the case of the deceased, the cause of death. And so your objection is overruled.
Thank
You may
you.
continue.
All right, Your Honor, may I have Trooper Stroud publish the photos to the jury and explain them?
You may.
Trooper Stroud, start with State's Exhibit number 4. Could you explain that? And if you understand the extent of the victim's injuries, could you explain those as well?
Yes, sir. This picture here is a picture of Charlie Pickens. The victim here was a pedestrian.
Your Honor, for clarification of the record, can he identify which exhibit that is, please?
This is Exhibit 4, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Exhibit 4 is a depiction of Charlie Pickens, a pedestrian involved in this crash. Ms. Pickens was struck by Unit 2 which had been traveling backwards after the impact with the collision from Unit 1. Due to the force of the collision from Unit 1 and the speed, it forced Unit 2 backwards, striking Ms. Pickens and trapping her underneath the vehicle. Ms. Pickens was transported to the hospital where she was later pronounced dead. This is State's Exhibit number 5. Exhibit number 5 depicts Mr. Pimentel. He was a pedestrian that was struck by Unit 3. He was crossing the parking lot and was struck by Unit 3, throwing him onto the windshield. He as well was pronounced deceased by Wayne Money there on the scene. All right, this is exhibit number 6, depicting Mrs. Hilburn. Mrs. Hilburn was also struck by Unit 3. This is her body right here. She was treated for hospital. She was transported for treatment in the scene. She did survive. This is State's Exhibit number 7. Which is Ms. Stewart, who was struck by Unit 2 as well as it was going backwards. Ms. Pickens was the other one struck by Unit 2, who was trapped underneath the vehicle. She was struck from the side, did have injuries that the doctor can, I'm certainly not a medical professional, I can't testify to the injuries, but she was seriously. State's Exhibit number 8 depicts the driver and occupant of Unit 2, which was occupied by Mr. Cox, and Mr. Urbina. They were the occupants of the vehicle. They had just left from school and were trying to pull out and leave the school campus, and were struck by the Unit 1. Mr. Cox does have serious injury. Mr. Urbina was injured and released from the hospital. All right, State's Exhibit number 9 is an interior photo of Unit 1. It depicts Mr. Wooten and the passenger, Miss Evans. Miss Evans was pronounced deceased on the scene by Justice of the Peace Wayne Money due to injuries sustained from the crash.
And Trooper, do you see the defendant, Mr. Wooten, here in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Okay, could you point to him?
Mr. Wooten's right here. He has an orange jumpsuit, a gray undershirt, brown hair.
Your Honor, will the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant, Mr. Wooten, in open court?
Mr. Wooten has been identified.
Okay, do you see the defendant, Mr. Coleman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you point to him and identify him?
Yes, sir. Mr. Coleman is in that orange jumpsuit as well, with gray sneakers, a goatee, and a dark black undershirt.
Your Honor, will the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant, Mr. Coleman, in open court?
Mr. Coleman has been identified.
Your Honor, at this point, the state will pass the witness.
Mr. Lincoln, on behalf of the defendant, sir, you may cross-examine the witness. Trooper, you may be seated.
Trooper Stroud, my name's Timothy Linden, and I've been appointed to represent these two young men today. I want to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer me the same way you did Mr. Kovach. You understand?
Yes, sir.
If I make myself unclear, or speak too fast or whatever, you tell me, slow down, repeat the question, okay?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
Now see those, please. Or did you publish the pictures to the jury?
Yes, sir. I gave them back to Mr. Kovach. All right.
All right. Now, when you originally responded, you heard the 911 tape here in court, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that first tape, the statement was there was some racing going on Monty Stratton Boulevard, correct?
Yes, sir.
And on this diagram, it doesn't show Monty Stratton Boulevard, but Monty Stratton Boulevard would be off to the, my direction's bad, off to the west here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Monty Stratton Boulevard is 2 lanes, one on each side of a divided road, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the report was a car got run off the road, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you made a statement that you did not ascertain which car that was, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you track down and talk to the person who made the 911 call?
No, sir.
Did you ask either one of you said you spoke to both my clients that day, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you ask either one of them which one was on the wrong side of the road that day?
No, sir.
Okay. If that was true, what the first person who saw this said, there's drag racing going on. Driving on the wrong side of the road is reckless, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Drag racing is illegal in this state, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And it's illegal because it can lead to injuries, correct?
Yes, sir.
And injuries because it's a dangerous thing to do, especially for young boys.
Yes.
Okay. In your training and experience, have you seen wrecks that involve from drag racing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And physical injury and death can result from those.
Yes.
And there's even a statute that calls for that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you arrived on the scene, you testified that you secured the area and did you take these photos or did somebody else at your direction?
No, sir, I took those.
Okay. Had you tampered with anything in the car when you took these photos?
No, sir.
Is this how you found them when you showed up?
Yes, sir.
Had anybody else to your knowledge moved anything in these vehicles?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, in State's Exhibit 9, that is Mr. Wooten, is that correct?
Yes.
And Miss Evans, correct?
Yes.
And neither one of them are wearing a seatbelt, correct?
That's correct.
And in State's Exhibit 8, it's Mr. Cox and Mr. Urbina, correct?
Yes, sir.
Neither one of them are wearing a seatbelt, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is it a fair statement to say that if they had been wearing seatbelts, that their injuries could have been mitigated?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What time was this call? Do you remember?
At 1:45 p.m.
At the scene here on the parking lot, Unit 3 was driven by Mr. Coleman, correct?
Yes, sir.
And now when they came into the parking lot, did you ascertain whether they were following each other or were they side by side, Unit 1 and Unit 3?
They were side by side.
Okay. And Unit 2 pulled out in front of Unit 1,
Yes, sir.
okay, and struck Unit 1 head on, correct?
You know what struck you into?
I'm sorry, Unit 1 struck Unit 2.
Yes, sir.
They're both involved. Unit 3 avoided that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. By avoiding that collision, it ended up striking some pedestrians, correct?
That's correct.
Were those pedestrians in a marked crosswalk?
No, sir.
They were crossing into a parking lot, correct?
Correct.
You stated that Ms. Hilburn, on your diagram, was pedestrian number 2. She sustained injuries. Was she struck by the vehicle or was she pushed out of the way by pedestrian 1? You recall that?
She was struck by the vehicle.
Okay.
The right side of the vehicle.
Is it your testimony that Unit 1, driven by Mr. Wooten, struck either Ms. Stewart or Ms. Pickens?
Unit 1 did not strike any pedestrians.
Unit 2 struck the pedestrians, correct?
That's correct.
And that was because of a wreck that occurred between 1 and 2, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that Unit 2 pulled out in front of Unit 1, correct?
Unit 2 merged in on the parking lot, yes, sir.
Okay. In that scenario, who would have had the right of way, 1 or 2, coming out of the parking lot versus straight down the parking lot?
There's no right of way in the parking lot.
It would be, each person has to determine the safety and move forward based on their decision, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's obvious from Unit 2's action that it was not the correct decision on his part.
That's
Objection, Your Honor, that calls for speculation.
Overruled, he's got training.
the driver of Unit 2, it would have been impossible for him to analyze the speed that Unit 1 was traveling.
How fast was Unit 1 traveling?
Unit 1 was traveling around 50 miles an hour.
And how far into the parking lot was he at that point? Looks like it was roughly 100 feet.
Yes, sir.
Were there any skid marks there?
No, sir.
How did you ascertain his speed then?
The CDR down a little bit.
That's a witness, Your Honor.
Anything else you say?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. State will call its next witness.
Call Officer Baker.
Officer Baker.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Mr. Kovach.
Officer Baker, will you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Nathan Baker, Greenville Police Department, been there 15 years, Sport Patrol Division.
Okay, and Officer Baker, you were the first police officer on scene, is that correct?
Yes, sir, the first Greenville officer is.
Okay, were there any firemen on scene when you arrived?
No, sir.
Okay, so you're the first, as they say, first responder who showed up?
Correct.
Okay. Just briefly explain to the jury what you did right when you got on the scene.
When I got in, I proceeded to the south end of the parking lot in order not to obstruct any other emergency vehicles that are in the parking lot. When I pulled around there,